Welcome to the Evingson Wellness Blueprint, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to holistic health and well-being. Join hosts Matthew and Rebecca as they deep dive into the world of wellness, exploring a wide range of holistic modalities, alternative healing practices, and evidence-based approaches to living a vibrant and balanced life. Nausheen Chen is a French-Pakistani public speaking coach and a 3-time TEDx speaker. She has coached CEOs and B2B founders of fast-growing companies to speak on the BBC, Forbes, TEDx, Bloomberg, Business Insider, TechCrunch, and more. She has helped execs at companies like IBM, Amazon, Walmart, and Procter & Gamble to build their personal brands through speaking on camera and on stage. She has 15 years of training, speaking, and coaching experience, all the way from Fortune 50 giant Procter & Gamble to bootstrapping a communications strategy startup to $1 million in revenue. Nausheen is currently helping leaders to speak with high impact on stage and on camera. Welcome, Nausheen.
Thank you so much for having me, Rebecca. I'm so excited.
Yes. Well, Nausheen is my coach. I'm in her Speak as a Leader bootcamp, and I have found it so fascinating to learn from her and to explore my speaking skills more. One of the most exciting things that attracted me to your work was the fact that you've been a 3-time TEDx speaker. So congratulations to start with on that. Would you mind sharing the story about the 10 seconds of bliss?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had been speaking on stages since I was maybe 7 or 8. One of the big goals was always to end up on the TEDx stage. When I decided to stop being a filmmaker and go all in on public speaking, I thought this is the perfect time to earn more credibility. Being on the TEDx stage was something that I knew would really help in terms of being more credible, more trustworthy as a public speaking coach. Regardless of how I had been on hundreds of stages before, but nothing is quite like TEDx. I applied. The very first talk that I knew I had to do was about that big change that I made in my late 20s, early 30s. I pitched the idea to one of the local TEDx events. I was living in China at the time, and I heard back from them. You have these multiple rounds. So first they accept your pitch, they invite you to a first interview. Then if you get accepted, they invite you to a second and final interview. After my second interview, I got a call saying that, yeah, you got in. We would love to have you there at the event. And of course, the first thing that occurred to me was, wow, that happened. That's awesome. This is going to be so cool. And immediately after that, I felt this intense imposter syndrome, thinking that, wow, I don't belong on that stage. I've bitten off more than I can chew. They're all going to see through me. I'm going to be a fraudster or a scam artist. No one's going to like me. I just made a really big mistake, and I'm going to make an even bigger mistake in public in front of everyone. I had to work through that because the time was for action. I had to get the whole talk together and rehearse it, memorize it for the first time, because I normally don't memorize talks. I don't recommend it for anything other than the TEDx stage. I had to talk myself through it. There was a part of me all the way till the end that was wondering, what's going to happen? How are people going to respond or react to this intensely personal story that I'm going to share? But of course, it went quite well. I had a whole audience that was very, very supportive. I had people come up to me after the talk at the event saying that, wow, I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of your mouth because it was so personal. And then getting this lovely feedback from you and from others where they can relate to the story. That's really why I did it. I wanted to make sure that no one else felt alone going through or having gone through those kinds of changes that really isolate you, because you are actively taking a stand and saying, I'm not going to follow what other people have told me, and I'm going to really try to do something different here. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but that's me.
That was your first TEDx, The Power of Breaking Your Beliefs, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. And you take us on a journey about a quarter life crisis and how it changed your life. Through that hardship, you had the opportunity to take a look at each one of these beliefs that you were essentially told this is how it is growing up as a child, and say, do I want to keep this, or is this something that I want to let go of? As a child, being told by one of your teachers, we do this because I said so, a phrase I remember hearing as a child as well, and knowing deeper inside me it wasn't helpful. Do you have any thoughts that come up as we raise our next generation to foster a curious mindset?
I would say parents probably have the most challenging job in terms of being communicators because they have
Yeah.
to communicate under stress to very impressionable minds in a very clear way. When you are speaking to impressionable minds, they will remember what you said. You and I are remembering things that adults told us decades ago.
Yes.
I can't imagine a role that needs to be more agile than a parent in terms of communicating. You have to be very aware of your audience, adapt your message to suit different situations for different audiences. Make sure that the way that you're explaining things is honest and that you are aware of whether or not you're being understood.
Hmm.
And checking in with the audience, engaging with the audience, the same principles that we teach in public speaking apply. And I would imagine would pay off really well if you're a parent.
There's a lot of power by my children asking me questions on why I have made this decision or why I've created this rule. Their input is important and valid. When my children are communicating with me, wanting to keep them talking, even if it's something that is not pleasant to hear, it's helpful. With your quarter life crisis, there was a rapid deconstruction. Your marriage ended, you changed jobs. Tell me what that was like to be in such a vulnerable space during that time.
Looking back at it more than 12 years later, I realize how fragile and vulnerable I was.
Hmm.
But when I was there in the moment, I felt invincible.
Ah,
Just being able to break away from things and making my own decisions for pretty much the first time in my life felt hugely empowering. All
yeah.
I could think of during that time was I'm doing something that I want to do. I'm doing things the way that I want to do them. And having that period of breaking away really helped. This is something that I studied in urban anthropology. If you are breaking away from your regular life and you're taking part in a very specific activity, you become bonded with whoever you're doing that activity with.
Hmm.
So, a very simple example is going to a game. You're breaking away from your regular life, you're going to a football game with a group of friends, and you have this intense bonding experience during that time. And then you return to the daily grind and you bring with you some parts of that experience. So, during that time, I was making friends with people I had never really made friends with before, meeting all kinds of musicians, artists, performers, creating indie films, breaking away from regular life, doing nothing productive, but doing so much because that was the time where I explored improv and stand up comedy. I ended up co directing and producing a segment on a late night comedy show, all kinds of creative adventures that I wouldn't have been doing if I had a regular job. That was a period of intense creativity and empowerment. I didn't earn for almost a year. I was living off of savings, no plan for the future, no idea what I actually wanted to do. It definitely was a period of vulnerability, but only in retrospect. When I was in it, I was having the time of my life.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I loved in your TED Talk how you described how a certain culture would look at your situation like, oh, she is divorced. Oh, poor thing. And really, your life was falling together in all of the most beautiful ways. I'm curious if you've always had a knack being able to give people advice on their speaking ability, or if there was a certain part of your life where you really started noticing details about the way people speak and then being able to communicate that back to them.
That I definitely developed later on in life. The actual love for speaking came first. I have been in love with being on stage and being on camera for as long as I can remember. From the first time I played Princess in Rumpelstiltskin to me being a radio show host when I was 19 to then becoming one of the youngest trainers at P&G for communication skills and realizing I love doing that more than the marketing and PR job that I was doing full time. So I've always been in love with speaking, and that has been the one constant in my life, despite all the changes. It was when I was a filmmaker and I was working with a lot of these CTOs and CEOs who were speaking on camera for the first time. When I noticed it doesn't come naturally to everyone, and people aren't themselves when they're on camera. I would see these people that were very impressive titles. They were quite okay when they were talking to their teams, but you put them on a camera or you put them on a stage, and they become these pale, robotic versions of themselves. That was the first time I observed that happening firsthand. And as the director, it was my job to get the best performance out of them. So that's when I first started coaching them without realizing I was coaching them. I would rehearse with these people weeks ahead of the shoot and get them to be more themselves, relax a bit more, help them understand what is the best way of delivery. Should they be using a teleprompter? Should they be using notes? And I would continue to coach them till they were on set and they had to deliver these lines. And when I was burning out working as a filmmaker, I got this idea from my husband that I should look into the one thing that I've been doing all my life, not getting paid for, but look into that as a living, a source of a job. I realized I have been doing this very informally. Maybe I can figure out how to concretize it and structure it and make it more of a framework. And that's where I started this very intentional process of looking back at all the things I learned the long way, the hard way, without even knowing I was learning them because I was just speaking and loving it. And I didn't realize that I probably was improving bit by bit, but over a very long period of time. So I sat down and I aimed to look at every bit of my experience, did more research, looked into frameworks, and then formalized and structured how I can teach people something that I've been doing and something that I internalized over 17 years.
Well, I'm very thankful that your husband gave you that suggestion because that's what brought me to you. And
Yeah.
also, I love the fact that our purpose work is often related to what we've loved our whole life. And what is it we've loved? For so many people, it may seem impossible to turn their passion into a career, but you're such a beautiful example of how it's absolutely possible. And it's so inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell the audience if they're interested in improving their speaking skills, why practicing in the mirror is not always the best approach.
I love that. I love the level of deep research you've done. Very impressive. So, when we speak into a mirror, it's difficult to focus on your own image and to be fully immersed in delivering your message. And you're depriving future you of data. A better way of doing an exercise, a practice, or a rehearsal for a presentation would be just to take your phone and record yourself doing every single practice. And that's just for you. It's not to put on social media. It's not to show to anyone unless you're working with a coach and you want them to see it. But first, it'll help you look at the data of your own performance, just like a top athlete would, what did you do well and what you can improve on. It will also help you set goals for the next time you practice. Practicing it over and over without a strategy or feedback means that you're concretizing bad habits. So if you're using filler words, you'll use them over and over. But if you can create one specific goal each time you practice something, and then watch it back to see to what extent you've delivered on that goal and where you're having difficulties, that's the best way that you will absolutely be improving with every single practice.
So, for anybody that doesn't have a speaking coach but wants to improve their speaking, can you tell us about the AI tool that you incorporate into our training to help bring awareness?
Yeah, sure. So the tool is called Udly, and it's developed by people who are passionate about encouraging people to become better speakers, regardless of where they're speaking and where they start from. So the AI tool is really useful both in terms of recording your meetings and giving feedback live. So it can tell you, Nausheen, you're speaking too fast, or you're not maintaining eye contact, you're not using gestures, and so on. But the beauty of it is that you can feed it any video. So you can take a video of your meeting, your podcast, or a video that you've created to practice a presentation. And you can put that video in, and it gives you all kinds of analytics that are really great to look at. My favorite are the pacing analytics, because I often have clients who either speak too fast or too slow, usually too fast. So seeing that data in front of them, and that breaks it down second by second. So you can see in this section, you were too fast. In this section, you were in the conversational zone. That really helps. It also helps you become more independent. If you can record yourself, see those kinds of analytics, then you know where you have more room for improvement.
Yeah, definitely. It is a fun tool to use. Improving my communication skills is going to help not only for public speaking, but for any interaction with family members, clients, friends. So, how have you seen it change people's lives outside of a professional role as they become more comfortable communicating?
First of all, what I've seen is that when you build your communication skills, you build your speaking skills, it does affect all aspects of your professional life first and then your personal life.
Mm,
So, for example, I was working with a client on a very specific presentation, her keynote, and we worked on how she can be clearer and more expressive, how she can use her gestures. And a few sessions later, she tells me, Nausheen, I have people in my team meetings tell me that I'm now smiling more and articulating better. She noticed that improving her communication skills helped her in other aspects of her work. When it comes to personal life, being clearer with friends, getting the message across in difficult conversations, that's
yes.
probably where I've seen it work the most for me and
Mm,
for others. Very often, we shy away from those difficult conversations in our personal lives. We just let things be, and very often they get bottled up till they explode. That had been the pattern of my personal life for a very long time. Actively working on communication skills, both my own and with my clients, has made me feel that I am very equipped to have those difficult conversations. And now I don't shy away from them in my personal life. If I can keep my cool and at the same time clearly communicate what I have to say, in control and steering us towards an outcome that is pleasant and a win win. It's given me that conviction, that belief that I can do that in personal life as well as professional life.
deliver the message, but remove the energy that's unhelpful. As I become a better version of myself, I'm more comfortable hearing the tough stuff. And speaking authentically is so important. I remember when my son was young, he was going to be going for a mountain bike ride with my husband. It was just going to be the two of them. I went to him and I was like, guess what? I can go mountain biking with you guys. My schedule changed. And he looked at me and he had the biggest smile on his face and tears in his eyes. And he was like, Mom, that's awesome. And I could see the tears. He wanted to welcome me and not make me feel left out, but yet in his heart, he really was longing for that guy time or that bonding time. And it's such a great opportunity to say, dude, you are so welcome to just go together and have it be guy time. I love that and foster speaking authentically for what we want instead of trying to please others or make them happy. As we open up our communication, we become less scared of the message, welcoming the message. Nausheen, I want to thank you for being here with me today. I'd love for you to share where people can find you and how people can work with you.
Awesome. Thank you again for the great conversation. This was so much fun. And the more I hear about your parenting, the way that you're approaching it, it sounds very refreshing. They have a real advocate for them. So
Thank
I
you.
love that. If anyone wants to reach me, my website is speaking.coach. There is a free course that you can take that shows all the principles of the framework that I teach. And that's how you can also reach me. So speaking.coach, you can contact me.
Thank you, Nausheen. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope today's episode inspired you on your journey of wellness. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review, subscribing, and sharing it with a friend. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a message at www.evingsonwellness.com.